What it is, what it is, what it is, YouTube. You know who it is. It's your boy, the Moose. Moose Squad. Let's kick it. I got one for you today. What is what is outlaw country? And what is the country sound? Let's get into it. Without further ado, we're going to get into the national sound and outlaw country. What's the differences between the two of them? So let's get into it. Very quickly, I'm going to try to make this quick. This is how Willie and Waylon and others broke free from the Nashville sound. Today, they don't seem like outlaws. Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, Hank Williams Jr., David Allen Cole, uh, Tom Paul Glasser, Johnny Paycheck, and numerous others are simply considered country legends. But outlaw country, as their brand of music came to be known as, was once a rebellion and controversial thing. Country music, as a genre, was managed by a committee in the 1960s, which labeled brass decided what sound was appealing, handing out assignments to artists and attempting to dictate their appearance in the public image. The so-called Nashville sound, with the strings attachments of the background singers, had been instituted in the late 1950s to differentiate to protect country music from commercial threat of rock and roll. But many artists, it was stiffing. They evident their rock and roll peers who could write and record their own music with a degree of creative control. And what was more, some rock musicians were making music and that sounded a lot more like country than the popular country acts did. Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones were prepping their albums in the 60s with country music that sounds more authentic to the genre roots than what the future outlaws were hearing from Nashville. And there they are right there. Chris Christopherson is right here on the left. Willie Nelson is in the middle, and Waylon Jennings is on the right. The situation had to change at the moment was born. Originally, Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard were respected country hitmakers who always been rebellious. Willie Nelson and Chris Christopherson were successful songwriters for other artists who made little headway with their own recordings. Waylon Jennings was a misfit with rockabilly heritage. He'd been in Buddy Holly's band, The Crickets. Really, I didn't know that. The folk tendencies, Hank Williams Jr. was a talented musician in his own right who'd always been accused of impersonating his father. A career track that would make a record label money, but was artistically unsatisfying to them. But I love that kind of music. A host and others included David Allen Cole, Towns Van Zant, Charlie Daniels, Guy Clark, and Billy Joel Shaver were just never going to fit into the mainstream country. Long haired, loud, and ornery, their kindred spirits were a free-willing rock star of the day and not suited up tie acts favored by the Grand Ole Opry. From the late 60s and 70s, outlaw country artists sang about drinking, drugs, and the life on the road. Their lives made of in touring outlaw music and inspiring artists of all stripes to follow their own path. There's Willie and Waylon Jennings. Willie is on the right and Waylon Jennings is on the left. One thing to be referred to as outlaw by musicians who made up the country movement each broke away from Nashville country establishments in their own way. The artists are following aren't the be all the end outlaw country. But if you're starting to look and introduce the genre, this is a good place to start. Look at all these people that broke away. Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Bobby Bay, Jesse Calder, David Allan Cole, Hank Williams Jr., Chris Christopherson, Billy Joel Shaver, Ryan Waylon Hubbard, Johnny Paycheck, Leon Russell, Town and Zedman, Jeffrey Joe Walker, Charlie Daniels. Outlaw country is a state of mind. And there it is. Willie, Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, and the Cash Man.
With sword and pistol by my side.
The early outlaw country musicians were untitled by sentiment, not style. Willie Nelson's Red-Headed Stranger isn't essentially similar to the work of Johnny Cash, and neither of these artists sound like Merle Haggard. But if you one focal point in their musicship is the Western swing bands of the 1930s and 1940s. Artists like Bob Willis and Hank Williams were hard-living musicians who toured constantly with their own bands, which had a lot more to do with the outlaw label than artist lifestyle. In 1960s, when Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings were trying to break out of the pack of Nashville, they ended up walking away from the country establishment so they could work with whom they wanted to, as well as their own recordings. Once artists were working for themselves, they were greater distance in style and sound, but dissimilar in ways of thinking. It's unclear who first started the term outlaw, but the genre was solidified in 1976 with the release of Wanted. The Outlaws are complicating featuring Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Jesse Calder, and Tom Paul Glasser. It was the first country album to sell 1 million records. Gotta break free. They brought a rock look to a country sound. There's the David Allan Cole Band. There's David Allan right there. In spite of the rampart in individualism, they particularly looked at the prefaces throughout the mainstream players and genres, as guys like Willie Nelson and Willie and Waylon separated themselves from the Nashville system. They grew their long hair and they shed the clean look. And for the peers, Willie started wearing tennis shoes and T-shirts to his performances, while singers like David Allan Cole and Waylon Jennings took a fashion cues from the rock stars and bikers. And everyone seemed to have learned from Johnny Cash before them, black is always in style. Willie Nelson went on the run and found outlaw country along the way.
Comes sweet and clear.
And guess what? This is a picture of him getting arrested for marijuana. Prior to the legacy of his God and Puff Puff Pass, Willie Nelson was a Texan-born Nashville-based songwriter who wrote hits for artists like Patsy Cline, Roy Orbison, but never managed to crack Nashville as a solo artist. In 1972, he decided to retire from music and move to Austin. Even though he laid down his guitar and pull of a sweet lady country was too much for Nelson, and after performing the Dripping Springs reunion, he put a backing band together and recorded Shotgun Willie in 1973. Willie, while the album didn't sell well, inspiring Nelson to keep recording. A year later, he released Phases and Stages, a concept album about the end of a relationship. In 1975, Columbia Records put out Willie's master Red Herring Stranger. The Outlaw Country album reached number 1 on the Billboard charts and number 28 in 43 weeks, 28 in a 43-week run and overall charts. it's safe to say becoming an outlaw changed Willie's life. Johnny Cash, the godfather of outlaw country. That's the Cash Man right there. Johnny Cash is bigger than country music. His influence can be found in everything from a singer-songwriter of the 70s, baton front indie rock band, The National. While the sound of Cash changed throughout his career, the two things that stayed the same were his songwriting and pursuit of wearing black. Even when Cash was playing songs and full Nashville country orchestra behind him, the songs were taking speed drinking and self-destruction. His music may not have played a role in the sound of outlaw country, but his anti-establishment ethos is something that his outlaw and athletics picked up from day one.
All never will. Making their way.
Waylon Jennings lived and breathed the outlaw lifestyle. There's Waylon Jennings. You can't talk about outlaw country without mentioning Waylon Jennings. Well, you could be the willful, ignoring one and impacted figure of the genre. After a release of Ladies Love Outlaws in 1972, Jennings was laid up in the hospital with hepatitis. Sorry, he was finished with his music industry, but after his new manager, Nella Risser, negotiated the singer's contract to give him more money, the artistic control, he was able to fully recognize his vision. Jennings moved to Texas in 1973 and recorded Lonesome, Ornery, and Mean, and Honky Tonk Heroes. His first two albums were both critically and commercially successful. At the height of the outlaw country, Jennings questioned his fellow artists, choose to life, sex and drugs, and rock and roll, and named a genre. Are we sure Hank done it this way? That's a good song. If you ain't never heard it, are you sure Hank ain't done it this way? Which has only made him more of
Hank done it this way. No, I don't think Hank.
a hero. Jennings passed away in 2002 from diabetic complications. Singing about the scene was the beginning of the end. And there it is. Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and I think that's Merle Haggard. The lifestyle of outlaw is inconsistently in best if late nights, long drives didn't kill many of genres. Artists in the 70s, drinking and drugs did, even though the singer-songwriters who survived the 70s intact felt with death kneel at the outlaw classifications. Even when big enough, the system could no longer ignore you. The outlaws who had been an irritator of Nashville and country music establishment ended up reaping praise and winning credits from the industry they fled. Singer-songwriter Stevie Earle says that it wasn't an addiction that killed outlaw country. It was a self-methodical, he told Pitchfork. Outlaw country was necessary for country to survive. And here they are, Waylon Jennings, Tom Ball Glasser, Joan Colburn, and Willie Nelson. But their exercises can be forgiven. Outlaw country is necessary movement to keep country relevant and bring back its roots to the music of the people rather than produce product mix up Nashville test tubes. The spirit of outlaw music is now something that's handed down throughout the generations. In the 1980s, Steve Earle, Dwight Yoakam, Lyle Lovett, Lucid Williams, and others accepted the challenge of keeping country music authentic. Following outlaw country brought back together lovers and music. It's a genre that really came to exist as rejection of genre. These artists didn't fully buy into Nashville's recipe for country, but they didn't want to let go of their aspects of the twang. While rock genre was edging towards country, the act of All Man Brothers, Leonard Skinner, the Marshall Tucker Band, the Outlaws were bridging the gap from the other side. Call it outlaw country, southern rock, who cares? It was all is what listeners wanted to hear, and it's kept the sound and it describes a go. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this one. This one is touching for me to. I've always wanted to do a video on outlaw country because I wanted y'all to know that country music was put in a bubble, and it took rebellion to break that bubble. Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings. Um, if it wasn't for the 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 Highwaymen, if it wasn't for the Highwaymen, we wouldn't be where we're at today. The Highwaymen broke the mold.
With sword and pistol by my side.
So go ahead and leave a comment below what you think about the Highwaymen. The Highwaymen consist of Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, and Willie Nelson. I think I mentioned him twice. Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings. I'm missing one. Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash. I believe Johnny Cash was one of the Highwaymen. Hold on. Who were the Highwaymen?
According to
Who were the Highwaymen?
the Highwaymen has had 8 members.
Who were the Highwaymen?
The members of the Highwaymen include Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson, and Waylon Jennings.
That's it. I had it right. I just wanted to double check. I had to ask Googly. Right. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Go ahead and ring that bell for more notifications for videos like this and countless others. Go ahead and smash that like button. Leave a comment below if you made it all the way to this point. And mention the Highwaymen in your comment below. And tell me what you think of one or the other. If you like all 4 of them, leave a comment below. Leave a comment below if you like all 4 of them. If you like one of them, just let me know. Go ahead and check these videos out right here. And peace out.